Good morning, traders and investors, and a happy Friday and a happy 313 day. That's Detroit zip code, if y'all didn't know. We're going to get you some quick updates overnight from the conflict in the Middle East, including a headline: the U.S. will allow the purchase of Russian oil already at sea. It looks like that headline moved oil lower and maybe moved markets, at least got markets starting to move higher. We're going to talk about something going on with the fertilizer in this world and how there are some implications for fertilizer stocks. Certainly a group of stocks we haven't talked about in quite some time. Has Bitcoin put in a good base around maybe over the 70,000 level? A couple things we'll consider here on the macro front. Earnings wise, Adobe, Ulta, SentinelOne, few others. Meta delaying their avocado, but a couple insider purchases on our radar. Our insider purchases coming back into the front here and getting a little bit of traction. Heads up, folks, at 8:30 a.m. we got GDP and PCE. And guess who? At 8:35 a.m., none other than Real Life Trading's Tony Pawlak. Let's get it going here this morning on pre-market prep.
The volatility right now is really incredible.
Wow, look at that consolidation on the upper right chart.
You know what we've seen this earnings season? Some of these expected moves get even more violent. This is why I have switched my strategy 10 years ago. And if you're chasing, you're in trouble.
Let me get the TradeStation banner up here. Bro, my wife is envious of your hair. Thank you, RB Traders. I didn't take a shower this morning. Want to say thank you to TradeStation. Born to trade, chart, analyze, customize, all in one platform. Let's do a quick little rundown here, folks. S&P 500 futures trading up about 0.5%. Take a quick look at USO and crude oil trading down about 2.5%. Gold this morning, GLD, and the gold futures trading down just 0.1% or so. Silver, SLV, here this morning trading down 1.5% or so. Let's do a quick Bitcoin rundown. Bitcoin trading up 2.75%. Want to say thanks again to TradeStation, and let's bring in the Triple D Trader. How is your morning going, Dennis?
It's going a lot of chop. So we're still in this choppy environment. Traded last night a whole long time, trading into the night as well. Just been a lot of trading. I'm feeling a little bit better, so I'm trying to really get my trading shoes on here.
Heck yeah.
Stocks are all moving together here right now. I want to have a quick VIX conversation here, because when the VIX is elevated, stocks start moving together. Obviously, the VIX is elevated because of the war situation. Middle East headlines continue to drive the bus. But I mean, when you're looking at, individual stocks, there's, this morning, everything trading really in the green here. I know you get these, Meta just went to the red, and we'll get to that in a second here. But for the most part, stocks, when you get an elevated VIX, all start trading together, even to the point where we've seen some of the oil stocks with USO ripping, oil stocks themselves not really following, and in some cases actually, not going up at all. And even this morning, USO is dipping. We had oil futures dipping, XLE trading higher here. So you're starting to see where, with the elevated VIX, just stocks all start to move together. So that's one thing to consider when you're trading. Is it's a stock picker's market when you have a VIX under 20. 20 to 30, it starts to get to a point where stocks start to tend to move together. Above 30 on the VIX, stocks all start to move together. Yeah.
Stock pickers market completely off the table over 30, certainly, but I'm looking at the VIX right now. I just had the VXX up a second ago, but the VIX itself is actually around 26 right now. Dennis, what do you use to watch the VIX? Do you watch the VIX that way? I know you are like, I have my own VIX indicator in my brain.
Well, yeah, and again, it depends on what you're subscribing to. So as a pro, I've said this before, they want to ding me really high on some of these futures contracts here. So, I don't have S&P futures anymore. I used to, so it's funny, but before 2006, believe it or not, these were services and the quotes were free. You believe that?
Yeah.
This is free quotes. Do you remember that, Brentster, back in the day?
I don't remember that, no.
And then they became a public company, New York Stock Exchange, and then they went for profit. So it went from non-profit to for profit, and then it just escalated and brought quotes up more and more and more. You know, I pay about $300 to $400 a month for quotes right now between NASDAQ, Total View, between ICE. I think it's probably actually over $400 a month. But then the futures quotes, you know, when I want to get those, they were shopping. They're like, it's going to be $600 a month for futures and for all these other futures products, CME products. I was like, you know what? I don't need them because SPY trades all night long. SPY doesn't even close anymore. So I can clearly see where the market is just by looking at SPY. Now, ex-dividend date screws you up 4 times a year. But, you know, I've unsubscribed from that stuff for the simple reason that I think it's ridiculous, you know, to pay those kind of quotes. Now, if you're not pro, you get a cheaper fee. You can also get bundled fees. You can do different things. But as a pro, once they do, and how do they deem you as a pro? They can actually just deem it. You don't even have to have a license. They're going to say, oh, how much are you trading? They can look at it and they can just figure it out because they want to charge you pro fees. So, but me, you know, having the break trading, prop trading background, it's a no-brainer. So they ding me there too. I know Joel had the same thing. They were trying to ding him on, you know, being a pro at one time too. So even though he doesn't have a prop account, you know, he's not even an active trader. He's an investor. So it's, you know, that's why I don't follow the VIX. Like I don't follow like, you know, any VIX products, but I know where it is.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good little segment there. Let's get to the pretty much one headline and a couple of the implications from last night. Around 7:30 p.m. last night, the U.S. Treasury issued. It wasn't on the U.S. Treasury website itself. I couldn't find it, but they issued a headline that said, it's on screen right now, the U.S. license permit sale of Russian crude oil and petrol products loaded on vessels as of March 12th. So this means that if there is already Russian oil at sea, the U.S. has licensed the permit for it being sold. We saw markets move a little bit lower at first, but then we started to rebound and oil moving, it seemed like, higher on this. The one area we want to focus on here for an interesting trade idea, I mentioned it in the intro, but a group that we haven't talked about in a very long time is the fertilizer stocks. And related to what's happening in the Middle East and, you know, looking for more ways to get oil and more petrol, there's some fertilizer stuck at sea right now. There's 1 million tons of fertilizer that are stranded in the Strait of Hormuz and can't get out. So we have seen fertilizer prices rising on that. And we have a little bit of a fertilizer watch list here that I'll pull up in just a sec. You have any thoughts on this, Dennis?
Well, first of all, 1 million tons are stranded. So there's 1 million tons. And there's obviously farmers that need fertilizer here. So there's going to be a bottleneck here, another bottleneck. I mean, we've given crude so much love, and the market's given crude so much love. But the last couple of days, they've been giving fertilizer stocks a lot of love because, hey, that's not the only thing that goes through that strait. So if you look at a stock like CF, and you can bring these up here, Brentster will bring up your charts here right now. You know, CF has moved from 110 to 136 in the last 2 days. We have NTR, which is Canadian fertilizer company Nutrien, moving from 75 to 85 in the last couple of days. MOS also moving up from $26 to $32 in the last couple of days. IPI Intrepid Potash is another one here too. Same story, moving from $40 to $50. These are temporary price displacements. And that's a big word to just say that these stocks moves are based just on that temporary supply constraint. I do not believe that these stocks will stay elevated here. Now, we don't know how long this, you know, how long this is going to last. But it's also when you're sitting in these stocks and, you know, they haven't really moved that much over the course of the last, you know, couple, and then all of a sudden they start moving up 20, 30%. Usually it's time to ring the register on some of these names. So you know, you can chase and then you can put on anything for a trade, and it's got some momentum, it's got some stuff going. So nobody knows where the party ends. I just know when the dust settles, something like the USO is probably not going to remain elevated at 115. When the dust settles, these potash stocks probably aren't going to remain elevated up at these, you know, prices because of this constraint. Now, you know, it can be another headline, maybe another ship catches fire. They definitely could continue to go higher here. We're not saying this is the top, but what we're saying is these are temporary price displacements, and as soon as they get that straight open here again, which could be a while, these stocks probably come crashing back down. So just don't marry these and say this is the new trend. Everybody's going to need more fertilizer here. This is a supply. This is basic economics, supply and demand. Supply constrained means, you know, the current amount of demand here is not going to be satisfied, and that's why these stocks are going higher.
Make it a quick trade if you're trading it. If you are long term, this is potentially an opportunity to lighten a little bit. I do
I
have
think so.
the little watch list on screen right now. Just to recap it: CF, MOS, NTR, and IPI. Chat, let us know if there are some other ones that we are forgetting here. So much of being a participant in the markets, whether you're a trader or an investor or a researcher, more like myself and a news guy, making watch lists. So chat, if we're ever talking about stocks or a group or a theme and we forget a stock, please let us know. I have a whole bundle of watch lists over on my desktop computer over here that I'm adding all the time. When there's a news item happening real quick, we'll reference them. Oh, where's the peers? Where's the sympathy plays?
And we know for next time too. I mean, the market really dropped the
Yep.
ball here because USO has been going up here for 2 weeks, and then they just like realized, oh my gosh, fertilizer's bottlenecked here too. So it's probably not a bad idea in chat. You've got almost 1,000 of you in there here this morning between Twitter and YouTube. I mean, you guys got ideas of other things getting bottlenecked here that the market hasn't thought of yet. Let us know here. What else goes through that strait? It's probably not a bad idea to go ask Gemini or whatever else you're using. If you're using Anthropic, if you're using ChatGPT, probably not a bad idea to do a little bit of like, hey, what else goes through that strait? Because the market, like I said, is not efficient. If it was efficient, these fertilizer stocks would have went up 2 weeks ago. It took them a while to realize, oh yeah, fertilizer is stuck here too. There's other things in there now. And again, this is a big point being made. Farmers, farmers need fertilizers now, not in 6 months. It's a problem.
Totally.
It's a problem. It's going to drive prices higher here because those farmers, we're coming into farming season here. So this is the major problem. This is not, if it was the middle of the winter, this happening, in November, December, January, you're probably not as concerned here. When it's happening in March, as you're going into planting season here, where you need fertilizer here, worst time for this to be happening. And that's why you're seeing this explosion in the price of the fertilizer names.
Let's touch on Bitcoin here because it is something that has made a nice little base here. I'm gonna pull up the IBIT chart, but looking at Bitcoin futures are around 72,000 here. Dennis, we were talking in the STN room last night.
Sure.
And I think it was last night, and you were saying Bitcoin seems like it's decoupling. What did you mean by that, and what is the implication, if you don't mind telling our
what we've
audience?
Seen with Bitcoin here over the course of the last couple of years, it's basically become like a NASDAQ stock. NASDAQ's weak, Bitcoin's down. Bitcoin's weak sometimes, NASDAQ, it's moving more like a tech stock. Because why? Because it's the population of who's in there. 5 years ago, it was the hardcore crypto people. It wasn't a lot of speculation in there. Now it's full of speculation. It's full of the same investors that invest in high growth tech names.
The same.
So you have that overlap. So the people who, the hodlers aren't gonna, aren't selling. The people who have been in there for years aren't selling. But that's not what moves price. They're not buying or selling. They're just hodling. So that's not moving price. What moves price is active traders, people who are actually doing buying and selling. Because just picture something. If nobody sold it or nobody bought it, the price wouldn't move at all. But when you have, speculation in there, now you have active buyers and sellers. So for the last couple of years, Bitcoin has just simply been trading with the NASDAQ. It moves down, the NASDAQ, it's kind of moving together. And you can see, the last couple of months, Bitcoin has kind of almost led the sell-off to a certain extent in the NASDAQ. We started losing Bitcoin in November, started losing NASDAQ slowly later. It's moved as a risk asset. What has happened here in the last couple of weeks is that the NASDAQ in the market has been relatively weak, yet Bitcoin is holding up. So that's telling me a lot of the speculation that was in there, some of it has left. And maybe you're getting back down to what it was originally built for. I mean, crypto, Bitcoin was originally built as this counter to US dollars. I mean, we are inflating the hell out of, our US debt right now. Why? Because we got a war that's just burning cash, literally blowing it up, blowing up cash, blowing up cash. So you've got, obviously, the debt's going to explode here this year again. So Bitcoin isn't a printing press here. There's only 21 million of these things out there. Yes, you can divide them, and I've argued that before, to 8 decimal points. So, there's a few more out there when you get them down to Satoshi levels. But at least, it's not just a printing press. So I wonder if we're not starting to see Bitcoin hold up and wanting to rally. You can see it wants to rally. It didn't go up yesterday, didn't go up the day before. The market was getting killed. Now all of a sudden the market shows a little relief and Bitcoin's way up this morning. So you can see good relative strength actually in Bitcoin right now. And you wonder if some of its original, premise for being built, decentralized to, be a counter to the US dollar, isn't showing up here to a certain extent. So that is interesting to me as well. I'm still a hodler, but I mean, I think on dips here, I think actually I like Bitcoin. I said it 3 days ago when IBIT was at 38. I was like, this is setting up that, this is, been holding up really well. So I love the relative strength for you crypto traders out there. I love the relative strength of Bitcoin here right now. Is this the bottom? Well, nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know anything. Things can change tomorrow. But, for right now, you got to say Bitcoin is showing a lot of good relative strength.
Dennis, I'm going to put a crypto watch list that I've made, and I want you to take a look at it and let me know. I'm going to put it on screen. Just put it on screen. Let me know ones to throw out here from this list, or chat too.
There's some small ones there that
So exactly, which ones of the small ones should we throw out? Like you wouldn't personally ever trade. I mean, you might not trade a few of these, but just to mention them: Robinhood, Coinbase, Strategy, of course, Riot, Marathon, Bitminer, CleanSpark, and then Joel reminded us that Bullish, BLSH, recent IPO. Can't quite remember what it was, but they're also like a digital currency, digital crypto name.
I mean, first put Ethereum on there. ETHE maybe is a good ETF to track that trade. It's very liquid. I mean, Bitcoin and Ethereum's charts are identical here for the last little while. They just continue to move perfectly in sync together here. So then you can reach as far as like SB8ET. You could go in there because, you're talking with Ethereum as well. BMNR, Bitmine Immersion. That's
what was that first one you said? What was that first one?
SBET.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fairly liquid and it's moves along with it pretty well too. Coinbase is an obvious one. Mara, Riot, Hive, but the miners are a little bit different story, and obviously they've moved into some other businesses as well. So, but they're all still in there. I mean, Hive is holding its $2 level too. So, these stocks at least stopped going down, and that's a good sign because the broad market hasn't stopped really going down. These stocks have. So, I mean, and I love creating lists, and adding to them and taking certain stocks off. And sometimes relationships hold for the long term. Sometimes it's short-term relationships. Like right now when the VIX is elevated, everything's kind of just moving together. A stock is a stock is a stock. So, but that's not going to last forever. The VIX will come back in more times and will, de-escalate here. Peace will eventually come back here again too. But I don't know if that's happening imminently.
Can we do the Canton? Can we do the Canton in this group too? The CNTN?
Yeah, like I've been trading this, and I've actually, got a trading position on it here right now, so I'd limit my conversation. But Canton is something that Louis Sykes has brought us here. And CNTN, is obviously moves with crypto a little bit too, although it broke down there yesterday. So this company switched over. Canton Strategic Holdings, it's Canton. I have a little long-term investment, and I've been trading it a lot here too. So, I'm in and out of it. So I'm not going to talk about the trading portion, but I've been trading it every day. But I also have a core long position that I've just been holding on to too, just because Louis Sykes likes it. So it's spec. Yeah. This is huge spec. This is only speculation here, but we can bring that into the conversation. It kind of moves with crypto to a certain extent, but had a bad day yesterday.
And we will have Louis on next Friday around 8:15 or so. Just a little heads up there. You want to go to earnings now, Dennis?
Yeah, we did have some earnings here last night. I mean, we're kind of out of earnings season, but there was 3 big ones that I'd like to cover, and that's Ulta, Adobe, and Lennar. There's some smaller ones here too, RBRK, S, if you want to go into those too. But we probably should start with Adobe because this is a stock, obviously software names that have been really beat up. We talked about a low bar, like coming in on some of these names, but the problem is it was a really bad day to report. Ed in the STN room said it. I said it as well. I said any type of rip on any of these names probably gets sold because it was a really ugly tape yesterday. So you were reporting into the worst possible tape. What we saw was even on okay report, stocks were just getting hit across the board. So when you're reporting into a bad tape, the earnings just don't matter. And again, when the VIX is elevated, the earnings don't matter nearly as much either. We're in a VIX of 15, earnings matter a lot. In VIX of 30, individual news stories start not to matter as much. So give us the Adobe report, and we'll break down some of the trading action.
All right, cool. Numbers on your screen right now here, but I will read them. Company reporting 606. Analysts were around 587. Solid quarter there on the bottom line. Sales also beating about 6.4 billion. Analysts were around, 6.3 billion. Guidance wise, guidance was solid. Excuse me. They're expecting Q2 earnings 580 to 585. Analysts are under 570. And they also affirmed their 2026 guidance. They're expecting earnings 23.30 to 23.50. Analysts at 23.50. Company also announcing that its CEO for 18 years, very long time CEO, will be leaving the company, will be going through with his employment until they find a successor. So they have not begun looking yet. They said that they are going to start the interview process. We can set that aside here for a sec. But any comments on any more comments on Adobe, Dennis?
Well, normally, because the stock's been in shambles here, they would applaud a CEO change here, but it was just a bad day to report. One thing to consider is that Workday and CRM both got hit on their initial reports, and buy the dip did emerge here. So it would not surprise me. You got a huge level on Adobe. The 52-week low is $244. You're just above that right now. Well, it's good news that it's holding there. I mean, we can go back to the pre-market chart here too if you want. Just look at those things from the last couple of days. Or this is a pre-market chart. Oh no, it's not.
This is that was the daily.
Yeah. So I think there's the potential for a trade here. I'd give myself a little bit through that level. But if you want a bottom pick, and it's been a really tough environment to do that in, you got a good level at 240. You can make a call. And all trading is making calls and saying, hey, you know what? They bought the Workday, they bought the CRM. They've kind of turned a little bit on software names. Like the last couple of days haven't been great because everything's been getting dinged. But it held up okay yesterday. Is the software lows in IGV? It definitely was oversold, and then we got to a point where maybe, we just came up too fast. Now we're consolidating here. I wouldn't surprise you. I would lean more on buying Adobe down here as a trade than selling it. Now, I'm not entering my long-term investment portfolio, much like, we had George on yesterday, and he was talking about Adobe saying, the next quarter or two is going to be fine here. I don't know if I want to be in it long-term. Yeah. I think the quarter is fine as well. I think the CEO change is a good thing. It would not surprise me if they come in here and buy the dip on Adobe.
You said it, not I.
Yes, so we'll see how that works. Probably will fall $50 from here, and everybody on Twitter will say, "Yeah, Danny, you're bullish Adobe, and you suck like you always do."
I love your Twitter troll voice.
Yeah, I know the Twitter trolls. They're out there for me always. So it's okay though. The trolls make it fun.
Haters
kind of make it famous. Fun. I'd be missing the trolls if they weren't there.
Aw, you guys are
best buds. You'd be bored.
Here is your little heads up in preview. We do have PCE coming in with GDP at 8:30 a.m. in about 6 or 7 minutes here. While I'm at it, just give you the quick preview. This is going to be the second reading for GDP. We get 3 readings with GDP. Normally, this is the middle reading. The first reading was 1.4% growth for Q4. That was that big miss. I want to say it was back in middle of February. Expectations were up around 2.6% growth. So we'll see how this GDP reading was revised here in about 6 minutes. Also, we're going to get our core PCE reading. We are expecting a core PCE reading up about 2.7%. We'll break in with that news shortly. Triple D, cue me up for the next earnings report you want to go over, please.
I would do Ulta.
Ulta, okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, such a bad day to report here. So, it's probably not so much that Ulta's report was just a disaster, but, it's just a bad day to report. But, give us the Ulta numbers here.
It wasn't exactly a disaster. It wasn't great. It wasn't anything to kind of write home about. They reported Q4 earnings 801. Analysts were at 797. The sales beat a little bit better than the bottom line did. Sales about 3.9 billion. Analysts were at 3.8 billion. They are expecting 2026 sales 13.14 to 13.26. Analysts around 13 billion. So quarter kind of in line. Guidance a little better than expected. Stock down 8%.
50 points expected move. Down $49.70. Don't tell me these market makers aren't pretty good at what they're doing here.
Absolutely.
I'm still like as long as the S&Ps can hold up here, I'm still a little bit to buy the dip camp. I think the macro tape, from a trading perspective, not an investing perspective. I know everybody's going nuts because I said Adobe has potential to buy the dip here today. That's a trade, not an investment. I clearly said that. I think the same thing here on Ulta. If the S&Ps hold up, and it's going to be dependent on 8:30 data here. If the S&Ps all of a sudden roll over, some of these bets are off. So what I would say is you wait till 8:30, see the data. if it holds up, there's a potential for some of these names that are really beat up in the earnings today to get a relief pop. Is it anything more than that? I don't know. But, a relief pop is in store for a few names here because, these are pretty big sell-offs here, especially, on a name like Adobe. Like Ulta isn't nearly as beat up. So there's a lot of air below. Like it's not as clean. The Ulta setup's just not as clean. But it is good news that the market makers are holding up the $50 expected move.
Do you want to do another earnings loser, Dennis? Do you want to do an earnings winner? Maybe the one of the few earnings winners. He's like, which stock is this?
Rubrik?
No, I mean that was
Rubrik?
one that we watched last night.
Rubrik?
Yeah,
Rubik's Cube?
so we saw that. That's not it. It is Kodak. K-O-D-K.
Kodak. That's still a stock.
And I read this report out to the STN room because Dennis and I, for our afternoon show, 3:30 to 5, it's like a breaking news and real-time analysis show. It's really fun. I was breaking the news and I read Kodak's report. And I'm like, oh, this is like kind of a decent report. The stock moved higher. Dennis was like, what's the ticker? He hasn't looked at the stock.
Eastman Kodak EK, so I automatically want to type in EK. But Kodak is not a stock that I look at every day. To be honest with you, I didn't even realize it was still trading.
Shows you how much exciting of a stock this is. But let's mention it. Just bring a little optimism.
We're reaching
here
to find a little bit of silver lining here. A stock that's actually trading higher here. That's nice.
They reported sales of 290 million. Analysts were all the way down under 265 million. Decent report. Stock trading up here this morning. Just wanted to mention it. Bring a little bullishness here. Just maybe give a little bullish flow. But we can keep moving here. Unless you would like to comment on Kodak.
I don't have much to comment on Kodak. I mean, $8 it got up to. There was some resistance up there in February. Mr. Elconin would point that out if he was here. You kind of failed at that major resistance points. I would say guilty until proven innocent. And, I'm still in a fade the trade market, buying dips, short and rips, keeping it going.
There was one other earnings I think you wanted to cover, though. Was it Lennar?
Yeah. The home builder, LEN, the dip did get bought a little bit already here. Never dipped much. This stock has just tanking into the report from 120 to 92 bucks. And, so low bar here as well. What'd they say?
They said we missed for the quarter, a big swing and a miss. Reported Q1 earnings 88 cents. Analysts were up at 96 cents. Sales 6.6 billion. Analysts were up at 6.9 billion. However, if we have to grasp for any silver lining, their new orders and delivery guidance was not as bad as for this quarter. I think they reported, off the top of my head, for the Q1, they reported deliveries and new orders down maybe 10% on a quarter-over-quarter basis. Looking ahead for Q2, they are expecting growth, probably because it gets into seasonality. We're getting into March, we're getting into April, we're getting into May, we're getting into spring, when inventory, new homes on the market start coming into the fold. So maybe that's something why their next quarter guidance was okay, I guess.
Man, I mean, lower interest rates later this year is going to help this stock. This is not later this year. And the stock is breaking down a new multi-year lows. Stocks making new lows, I always say you have to go. Hard to be bullish this thing until I can get back up over 100. I think this is going to be a trade for later this year. I was too early on the TLT, and I don't want to be too early on Lennar.
Is there like off the top of your head, Dennis, is there like what's the word? Like a bargain home builder? Like I look at, like a Lennar, a KB. Is there like a more?
They're all kind of cheap from a multiple perspective. There's not like these stocks have been expensive. These stocks are fairly cheap.
More like from.
We got 20 seconds here before we get into this conversation. We got 20 seconds before we get some economic data here. So I want to get you ready for that too, because it's sneaking up on us.
Yeah, totally snuck up on me. All right, one more time, a little preview here. I'll pull up the SPY, by the way. Crap. We have GDP for Q4 coming in. Standing by for data. I'll get you the PCE too.
Wow,
also.
No movement here yet. They must not be out. It's got to be late.
I don't know if it's out yet. I'm not getting the data yet. It looks like we have some delayed data. Chat if you see it. Do I have it? Yes, we have A lower revision for GDP again. GDP for Q4 down 0.7%. Economists were looking for, up 0.7%, but that was worse than expected. We were expecting a reading up 1.4%. PCE here coming in line for fourth quarter, 2.7%, right in line there. Let me see what the month-over-month number for PCE was, up 0.4%. That was also right in line. If the market is moving here, which is not, it's moving higher
moving
here.
up slightly.
That GDP number, that revision was not good. And remember, folks, I mentioned it a minute ago, but the original estimate for the preliminary reading, the first reading for Q4 GDP was like 2.6% growth. We're now down to under 8% growth on a quarter-over-quarter basis. I wonder what the president is going to say about this number.
Well, if it's a bad number, he's not going to mention it.
Kind of what I was going for.
That's the truth.
You got my drift, and thank you.
Yeah, I mean, PCE, this is kind of in line. The algos don't know what to do with this. So they've bought up, like, they've reluctantly bought us up about 4 points on the S&P, not moving too much. I mean, I always like to look at TLT. That didn't move at all. IWM trading slightly higher than we were at the print, but you know, really here, inline numbers are the hardest ones to trade. So I think you just got back and forth here going in. I think it's going to equal more chop today. This isn't definitive, you know, bullish. This isn't definitive bearish. Probably equals more chop.
Look at what I can do here on TradeStation. This is so cool. So I was just at the 1 minute. I was just at the 30-minute chart. I wanted to zoom in. And if you are already in a minute time frame, you can just click into the chart, just press a number and press the enter key. So if we want to go to 5 minute, I press 5 and press enter, and it goes to the 5 minute. It's literally 2 keystrokes. 15-minute, 3 keystrokes. If you want to go to the daily, you have to like type the word out, but kind of a fun little highlight there for TradeStation.
We're not saying bad numbers. I wouldn't say that necessarily the numbers were bad, that they were in line. So I would say that's actually kind of good. You know, it wasn't hot.
We have two numbers here. We have an inflation reading, PCE. People always say this is like the number that the inflation number that the Fed likes to watch.
Sure.
That number is in line, and we have a worse than expected GDP reading. I think they kind of balance each other out in my maybe ill-informed opinion.
Yeah, so I don't think these numbers are going to move the needle either way. Again, now we look back to what's the next war headline. You know, that's where we are. So
that's this market. You just described
Tony's
this
ready.
Market.
If Tony's ready, let's run our guest intro.
He looks ready.
Keep our guests ready. Let's
Here we go. Good morning, Tony Pawlak, real life trading coach, owner, mentor, all around amazing guy. How you doing this morning?
I'm great, man. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Hanging in there.
Yeah.
Trying to stay positive in this market. It's not always the easiest.
No, it's not. It's like I thought after all this consolidation, we'd have a little bit more excitement one way or another, and it's still just kind of like more chop, just in a different zone. So I'm like, all right, well, pushing patience, man. That's been the name of the game so far this year, is just patience.
Pushing patience.
Yeah.
Should I change the title? Should I add the title of the show right now?
I don't think we had a title of the show.
We didn't have a title, so we could
add pushing patience would have been a good show.
No, but that's
Tony's going to be pushing charts here in a second here. So, you know, we'll do a lot of pushing here in a second. But Tony, I just want to first, before we go into some individual tickers, get your tickers ready, chat. Bring them out here because Tony Pawlak loves ticker time. So if you want him to talk a specific stock, put it in their chat right now. We'll get to it in a minute here. I just want to get your overall thoughts. Let's just start with SPY and get your overall thoughts, you know, from a technical base on this overall market. Because we know this market is being driven by headlines in the Middle East. Obviously, in the next headline, you know, Trump says something, pops up the market, you know, oil starts, you know, we get a tanker, you know, exploding, oil's going, you know, up, market's going down. But, you know, just talk from the technicals, you know, because the technicals take out the noise and they try to price it all in here. Give us your thoughts here on the S&P and the technicals.
Yeah. So overall, in my opinion, I think we've got a little bit lower to go. Just charts. We've noticed this months ago when we failed to really follow through on these new highs. I mean, let's see here if it has.
You want to show your charts?
Yeah, I think is it shared? You just got to turn the screen on, I think.
Okay, here we go. Thanks.
Yeah, we can get them up there.
Sure. There we go. Yeah, so this is a big warning flag on slowdowns normally. And we start throwing in all these false breakouts up through here. So that's a first little warning that something was around the corner. The thing that I look at is just patterns, right? It's if you can identify some simple patterns, like keep it simple, it doesn't need to be too crazy. This line right here had not been broken and was always bounced off of. That's where the bulls came in, and that's what led us to new all-time highs every single time. Well, last week, we closed below that very, very strong. That's the 20 EMA. So that's already telling me that, hey, there's some follow through now from the weakness that we were seeing up here at the all-time highs, which you never want to see. When it hits all-time highs, you want to be able to just have this thing really run. And so it was weeks of trying to get this engine going and just puttering out. So once we did that, now it was just a matter of I'm shorting every retest. And that's exactly what we did. So we bounced up, we sold bear call spreads. We bought some more puts, and it's kind of folding back under. Now, I don't think I've hit my, well, I haven't hit my target for the put yet. And I don't think we've found the bottom quite yet. We'll see. I don't know, right? No one knows. But the charts are kind of telling me there's a very high chance that 650 to 655 area is going to get interacted with. It's just a matter of when. So things can change. A tweet can change everything. Yes. Nothing is guaranteed, right? It's always about risk. What is your risk? Don't look at the reward. Don't be like, oh, Tony says we're going down here. There's a high chance we will. But it doesn't matter where we're going to go. It's about how can you mitigate risk on that play to that move. And so right now, I would say this is a pretty tough area to mitigate risk on. Really, it was back up into this resistance. That's where you can know you're right or wrong pretty quickly. Remember, it's all about figuring out these three answers here before you do anything on your trading. So first things first, you've got to be able to figure out trend. You've got to be able to figure out bullish or bearish, because if you're constantly going bullish, you're going to get burned. If you're constantly going bearish in a bull market, you're going to get burned. The next thing is you need to figure out momentum. How big of a move, bullish or bearish, are we about to get? And then after that, you've got to have your setup. Your setup is what's going to allow you to lose small and win big, because without that math, you're never going to make it in trading. Doesn't matter how right you are, right? So right now, we have the trend. In my opinion, we've broken higher lows on a daily time frame. We are bearish. We are making lower highs and lower lows. We'll see if that switches. Once we take out the lower highs, I'm flipping. I'm full bull. Let's rock and roll. Until then, anywhere in this range, I'm still looking bearish. So for me, there's a lot of weakness out there. And if you pull up the monthly, which no one really looks at, I mean, this is a whole lot of candles without any real massive support being built. So if the 650 level doesn't hold, we're going to see a lot more selling back into like 620 to 600, and then we'll see if the bulls want to play there. For me, I'm personally a buyer in this range. I love it.
If you
I think
get
it's
down,
fantastic.
that's
if we
10% lower than here.
Yeah, if we even get there. But this would be an early Christmas gift in spring if we ever got that, because I feel like we rampage out of here. Bulls should be very, very strong. I don't think we get there. I have no idea. But I do know that if 650 doesn't hold, there's nothing else holding us up. So I think we come and visit 650. I don't know when. I feel like there's a pretty high probability that that's where we go on SPY. So that's at least what I'm looking at. Again, I'm wrong all the time. So there we go. The thing is, lose small if you're wrong, win big when you're right.
Yeah, that's the name of the game here, Tony. Right, that's the name of the game. PW, also Lords wants Circle, CRCL.
CRCL. Nice run up. I mean, look at this double bottom right here. This is just gorgeous right here. Anyone can play this. My grandma is going to make money off of this for sure, I think. So this is what double bottoms are made of. Really strong support, right? Looking at where this thing IPO'd and what happened, everybody freaked out. Immediate reversal. Like the ingredients are here for some change in momentum. For sure. I wouldn't be a buyer right here.
Didn't want to pull back.
Wait for a little bit more of a pullback to come back through. There's a lot of things telling me that it's probably losing a little bit of steam on this. So maybe a little bit more of a pullback and then that. But I think this has a very high chance of playing out. Somewhere in here, there should be a lot of bulls.
That's where you want to be buying that next pullback.
A bit for the bull side. Again, whether it'll continue, I don't know. I don't know if we'll make it back to 250, but it does at the moment look extremely strong.
We had T-Bun asking Oracle, ORCL.
That's ORCL. We had CRCL. I was looking at that. I was like, wait, am I not already on Oracle? I was like, what? I just looked at my ticker. I was like, okay, no, it's a C. All right. I'm not losing it. This one, man. So I like the pennant pattern. That is normally a resting pattern and a continuation pattern to the downside on this because we were bearish leading into the pennant. So the fact that we're squeezing out and going bullish on this is a good sign. I would say be careful of the trap. If the bulls give back up like 148, let me zoom in on this. This one is my kind of line in the sand if you want to go bullish. If we're giving up 148, we have serious issues. This should easily run bullish. We should be squeezing bears out with no problems. So if it's not easily running, running bullish, kind of like I'll see if I can find something like this. This is what I'd want to see out of here. Back-to-back bull days, strong, long candles, should be strong. So far, gap up, okay. Yesterday, not exciting, but it was a big gap up. So let's see if this thing will funnel back in and then find some excitement. But if we don't see any excitement here, it's probably going to replay a lot of this up here, which is running and then just false breakout. And then now you have all these bulls trapped that now have to exit, and it leads to even more selling. So if that happens again, the next big levels probably are going to be back into like 120, 125, and then we'll try it again. So at the moment, it is looking a little bit soft. If it does run bullish, I would say a great target's like 195 to 200. I doubt we make it back to all-time highs. Who knows? But we got to get through 195 to 200 first. So great place for a target.
Laria wants AVGO Broadcom. This is a stock that's been consolidating for about 3 months here now, just in consolidation station. Let's get your thoughts on AVGO, Mr. Tony Pawlak.
Yeah, this one, in my opinion, I like this a lot. The bulls look like they are trying to hold certain levels on a monthly. We've pulled back. Now, granted, whenever we make these all-time highs and it pulls back, like I've always said, it just tends to not be very great. I don't love to see that, but the 50 EMA is holding really nicely. And again, we're getting these liquidity traps. We have such a great like head and shoulder pattern, and we broke the neckline, and then it gets bought up, gets bought up, gets bought up. We're so sideways on this, just like the markets, but I am liking the excitement I'm seeing. I think this is a lot more bullish, and potentially even back up into some gap fill areas could be, in the cards here soon. So if we can get daily closures above 355, that would be my confirmation. If you want to get in earlier, you can get a better risk reward, but there's not much confirmation, so it could fold. This to me looks very strong, like it wants to be bullish. And so I'd be leaning a little bit more bullish, at least until we get a weekly close below $300. If that happens, the bulls failed completely, and it should be reversing sentiment and dropping.
Annie was asking for SentinelOne, ticker S, and we didn't actually get a chance to give the earnings, so I'll do it here real quickly. They reported a slightly better than expected bottom line for the quarter, 7 cents versus 6 cents. The sales did miss, though. Mixed guidance because the Q1 results, the Q1 guidance was worse than expected, expecting earnings 1 to 2 cents, analysts up at 5 cents. But the 2027 earnings guidance was okay. They are expecting 32 to 38 cents. Analysts up at 30. Thanks for the ticker, Annie.
Yeah, so this probably opens the door to more chop. I do feel like it's trying to build a base. So I don't think we just go massively crushing lower. There's not too much further you can drop on this stock, but I think, if it wants to try to grab some liquidity down below 1230, great. I could see that playing out. I don't think we get that low. Structure is trying to be built. The one thing that I would probably pay attention to, again, look at the EMAs that are rejecting. This blue line is the 100 EMA. It's a simple way, right? I use EMAs as support and resistances, not to tell me to get in. So if I'm seeing a pattern form here, I think there's a high chance we'll come back and visit this again. So at some point, the question is how low are we going to go before it bounces? And this is the game you're playing on risk reward. Again, we see an edge potentially to move back up into here. Most people get stuck because they have targets all the way up to here when they should be looking here first. And so they're like, oh, this is great, where they should be taking profits. They're holding out for something big. And then it just reverses and they give it all back. So understanding where your target should be, but second off, looking at where's my risk reward. And if I'm trying to take this trade right here, right now on this gap down, and my stop is right here, I've only got like a 1-to-1 basically risk reward. That's not great. You're not going to get ahead with a 1-to-1. You need a 2 to 3-to-1 at least if you're playing with around a 50% win rate, which most directional strategies are going to sit there. You'll have some that are higher, some that are lower, but the goal is, right, you're getting 2-to-1. So if I'm looking at this, the risk reward's not there. And this gap down, honestly, is more than I would want. If the bulls would have gapped up on this, there's going to be some excitement there, especially if they would have cleared out this big resistance level. That's really the big weight. So because this is such a big sentiment level, if it does bounce, look for targets to be here and for some selling to come through. At this point for me, I would look to move my entry where this stop is. Do this. I would do this. This is how I would play it right here. So now I'm getting a 2-to-1 risk reward, playing some type of liquidity grab if it comes, because I feel like this base is being built and I don't think we're just going to fall off a cliff. That's a lower probability. And if we do, then I understand what my risk is. I just lose one risk unit, call it good. It's worth a shot at it. This is how I personally would play it, because the risk reward in here just isn't worth even showing up for.
France and Italy open talks with Iran and hoping of securing a safe Hormuz passage. That is why the S&Ps just popped up here about 2 minutes ago here. So you got France and Italy want to be talking with Iran here, trying to obviously get the passage open. And we know that's been an issue here. So keep an eye. Oil leaking on that. Also, your fertilizer stocks going down on that headline as well. We'll continue ticker time here with Tony. STM member Barat wants to know about Roblox, RBLX.
RBLX. Man, Roblox just continuing to find more weakness.
Yeah.
I thought this would be a really good buy area here, and I wasn't alone. Like some people did too. But the fact that it gave this up, I think, kind of changed the game, because once we come back and visit, the markets like to visit back these key levels. We visit once, get rejected, visit twice, get rejected. And I think that's kind of the end game right now for this. And so now we've got to figure out, where are the bulls interested again, because they're not showing up where they should have. This should have been a very easy buy up there. Probably hunting $50 again, maybe even 45. This would be the next play area, I think, for the bulls to see if they're going to do anything with it. That's what I would be waiting on. Would I short this? No, you're late to the party shorting this. So this, in my opinion, is a lower probability play. Again, even though there is a pretty good chance that we're going to get some moves down. So how would I play this? Day trades. I would use this momentum to day trade this down, because swing trades, anything like that, is just not really playing out. You can start selling some options in this area. I feel like this is a good play for some options. If you want to start selling some puts around $40 or so, that's what I would do. Some credit spreads around this same area. If it goes lower and you end up getting assigned, you bought it at a great price. I feel like it's a pretty good play over the next year. I don't know if it would bounce out of there. No one knows. But either way, it's talk to the people that bought up here, and they would do anything to be able to buy at $40. So that's how I'd play it. It was play this with some options right now, but day trade this bearish, really, I think, is where the sentiment's at. That's a high probability play.
Tony, I could just watch you draw on charts for like a while. Like with the combination of your calming voice and just the way you draw, I'm mesmerized.
Thanks, guys. I've been doing this for a hot minute or two.
Yeah, I can tell. We can tell the way you move around your charts. I can tell. Scotty and Nia asking about SanDisk, SNDK. Certainly the high flyer in memory. Dare I say the best of breed? I don't know.
Whew. Yeah, this thing has been on a heater, and the bulls stepped right back in, basically the way they should. Look for this. Bears easily should be taking over. Again, be careful shorting these high-flying stocks, because bulls are just waiting for bears to commit so they can start squeezing them out. This is high, right? We're starting to get a little bit into the place where your risk reward is getting tough. I like this bear candle. It gives me some type of level to play against of where the bears have come through. So up above the bear candle of yesterday, should continue to squeeze out and probably work its way back to a new all-time high. I don't know how much higher this thing can go, but this is looking pretty solid in my opinion, for it to continue based on the sentiment we just had. Even if it drops, in my opinion, we're still looking very bullish. So we got to take out the big buying candle. Once that happens, then I think we might actually see some follow through from the bears. But right now, anywhere through here, if it builds a position, you can find a risk reward. It still looks pretty bullish, like the game wants to continue. I don't know how much longer though, but bulls are still there, especially after the bears have tried. So I like the sentiment.
Let's do one more here and maybe saving the tough one. I just looked at the chart. I'm like, oh, this might be a tough one for Tony. We got Grumpy Grandpa over in X giving us Vertiv, VRT, Victor Romeo Tango.
Whew. All right.
Is this a tough one, Tony?
Yeah. So it's extended, and again, we're getting those upper wicks that Spy was putting in last month. So the weekly chart is letting me know sentiment overall is starting to weaken some. If we can close strong today, that could change the game a little bit. But either way, we know that charts are always going to put this pattern in. And so right now we're sitting about right here. So I would say pretty soon on a weekly time frame, we might be seeing some selling coming through, but it is full buy the dip mode in my opinion. This looks fantastic. Wherever this thing can get at, I'd be looking for my bull sentiment on this, but I personally would pass on any bull trades up here. A lot of people are going to see this gap and try to run on it. The risk reward is not there, in my opinion. I feel like this is a low probability play. It's a lot of people chasing up here. If I were in this trade down here, I would not be adding to this gap up. I'd be taking profits as this run. And so that's just my 2 cents. Again, this can go another 300,000% higher. It doesn't care what I think. But from just knowing how the markets move and what the charts say and the sentiment we've had for the last little bit, we're close, I would say, to some weakness starting to come through and profit targets being hit. So that's what I would look at on this one. I wouldn't, again, if you want to try to short this, great. I would wait for structure to break, like wait for 235 to break is what I would do before I went short. But again, your risk reward is just not very big when that finally happens. So yeah, be patient is what I would do. Let this come back down, play some bulls, and see if this wants to play back higher again from there. Because I think this is a great buy if we can just get a little bit lower.
All right, Tony, we're going to wrap it here. We always appreciate your sentiment. We always appreciate your drawing on the charts. Chat loves you. We can't wait to have you back in a couple Fridays, Tony. Have a good day.
Appreciate you guys. Yep. Have a great one. Have a good weekend. Bye.
All right, Triple D, how you doing out there?
Yeah, bring the charts back up. Obviously, we had a little bit of pop there with that headline coming out of the Middle East there. Oil dripping down a little bit, leaking. I'm doing a lot of puns here. It's kind of intense.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, not very good though. Let's go to Meta because Meta's having a bad day. It's down $9. Meta's avocado AI model underperforms the peers. The launch is delayed. This is a story from the New York Times. Obviously, it's all about AI. You get a negative AI headline. It's going to hit the stock. From a technical basis, man, we should maybe kept Tony on here because he could have the technicals with us here too. But we were been consolidating here for a while. I do have Meta in my long-term portfolio. It looks tired to me. So we'll see if this dip gets bought. You obviously have, going back to the low 2 days ago, 626.78. Below that, you're looking at $600. So, I mean, you need to hold that 626 level because other than that, then you're starting to think of the natural bounce. And 600 is huge support. That'd be like a 7-star level from the Elconin levels, educational,
school of
Elconin levels.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah, so that's your next big support, but you have a minor support there, 626. Let's see what it does there. Wow, though. I mean, you're just in a market here where, even the rip that we just had is getting sold. There's just a lot of overhead supply. A lot of people hurt. Even what Tony was saying, he thinks we're still going lower overall. I think we've just done a lot of technical damage here. We've broken a lot of, the backs of some of the bulls here. And, we haven't had a serious correction in a while here. Can we get a 10% correction on the S&P? We could. Now, again, that can all go to the back seat. They do a deal, get that straight open. Headlines are still going to drive the bus here. So it's hard to trade anything technical when we've got Middle East headlines just completely driving the bus.
Dennis, we did get a nice, generous tip from the great trader 99 asking for us to take a look at Trade Desk TTD. Would have been nice to have Tony on for this one too, but TTD, we haven't really looked at TTD and STN in, I don't know, a couple of weeks, maybe a week and a half or so. pull up the chart here in a sec.
Well, you had the positive headlines. You had an insider buy, and then you also had another positive headline. I forget what that was on Gap update. When
Looking.
It from 25 to 33. One thing to consider is when your stocks are in, heavy downtrends, when you get 10, 15, 20, 30% pops, and it was almost up over 30% from the lows, those are usually ring the register opportunities here. With that being said, I think the natural spot is the gap fill here. So, we obviously gapped, from 25.59 up to over $32 there. We're trying to fill that gap here right now. So do we get back and fill it all the way to 25.59? I don't see why not. We're in a tough tape here. Would I be a buyer down at 25? I think from a trading perspective, old resistance becomes new support. I think 25 is a good level. Now, again, probably not entering my long-term investment account. TTD has been a mess, so there's a lot of things to consider here. But I do think, that gap fill trade could be, the potential for a setup where you find some good support down 25.
So
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the tip. Great trader. So there was a bunch of insider purchases, right? That was.
Yeah, there was, and there was something else too, and I don't remember.
Yeah, what was it? Oh my gosh.
Oh, the rumor. You're right.
Oh, the
OpenAI. The
OpenAI held early talks with. Yeah. So I just wanted to mention, going back to it for a sec, because I am seeing at the same time there was kind of like a round of insider buys. There was like 3 or 4 or 5 insider buys. Since then, this one kind of flew by us, but I am seeing an insider sale, rather large too, and I do believe this is in the open market. So if the stock got a little bit of optimism because a bunch of insiders were buying, even though we tend to believe that the insider sells don't impact prices much, on a sentiment basis, we do still have like at least one insider as a director selling 150,000 shares on, when was this? This was on the 5th of March. So just a little heads up on TTD. You want to do a couple quick ratings, Triple D?
Yeah, let's do it.
Here, let me run our nice intro. One that you had on your radar, I know, Triple D, was Ollie's bargain bin. Is this a dollar store? This is an off pricer, right?
They are. It's been one of the weaker ones though lately, and Ollie's was really, a loved stock. If we go back just to a few years ago, there, 2022, 2023, stock went from 40 to 140. Probably just got a little bit overpriced, overdone. I do think they still like this. It's one of those, bargain, Ollie's bargains. I mean, people like a good bargain, and I still think, with the economy going to get tougher in the second half, I think people still will be looking for bargains. So I think it sets up okay. We get an upgrade from Wells Fargo here this morning to buy. They recently reported earnings here too. So you get a little bit of a lift here, with the upgrade here. The earnings were, I believe, 2 days ago and popped and then faded back. And again, we're in a market environment where RIPs are getting sold. So, this might just be more market impacts than, the stock. Sure. So Wells Fargo coming in, and they're definitely, I like the setup here. I think this gets support down to $100. So I kind of like this area. So I'm with Wells Fargo. I'll give them a B+.
Can I give you a little color before you rate it? Take your rating back. Take your rating back. Okay. Firm is encouraged by the Q4 update and believes Ollie's, quote, story continues to build momentum. Analyst sees an attractive 2026 setup for the shares, given tailwinds from the One Big Beautiful Bill and the recent sell-off in shares. The company's Q1 to date comps seem good considering the weather. The firm says the stock's valuation does not reflect the company's outlook. Reading some of that color from the fly. Thanks to the fly for that color. How would you rate it? Didn't do much for you?
No, I'm still going to go the same. I like the support area here. The stock is out of favor right now, so that is one consideration. It's a tough environment. So, I haven't really done any long-term investments in a while here. And, people say, well, this is the time to do long-term investments. But I feel like, we're down 4 or 5% from the highs. Like, I'm with Tony too. I just think we're going lower here. So I think we're trending lower. I don't know what the next headlines are going to happen. I don't think Iran is done. We get, the Strait getting open would be a good, sell the rip event here, if they can actually get that open. But, as of right now, I mean, I just don't think Iran is done. I think there's going to be more, hostile. I think there's going to be more attacks, unfortunately, here. And I think they're just not going to go quiet into the night. So I think this war is going to be a lot longer than the stock market is pricing it.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention I don't think we mentioned the Trump from the comment from Trump about how the U.S. has a ton of ammunition and all the time in the world. And the one thing I'll say about this market is the market didn't react to that timeline comment. I feel like a couple days ago, if Trump would have said, we have all the time in the world for this war, the market would have reacted. And I don't know if it did overnight.
This is a conversation in itself that we had, and then we can just finish with this, is that when you talk up the markets as much as Trump does, the market becomes numb. So, I mean, the Trump put is there, and his ability to talk up the market is very sound. If he starts using that on a daily basis, the market will become numb to it and not believe it. So it's very important for Trump to hold that power that he wields.
The silver bullet,
every
right?
day. Like when you just keep banging, yeah, it's going to be over soon. Yeah, it's going to be over soon. Yeah, it's going to be over soon. The market starts to not believe it. So it's, I think, if you can be, and say, yes, Trump can still prop up the markets, but he's going to have to say bigger things and bolder things. It's not going to be just as simple anymore, like, oh, it'll be over soon. The market's not believing it now.
Yeah.
So it's tricky because he's in a tough place here. You got midterms coming. He doesn't want the stock market going down. He wants to finish this war. He knows it's going to take a lot longer than maybe first anticipated here. And oil prices obviously flying up is not good for his poll numbers whatsoever. So he's going to continue to do that. But I think at a certain point in time, the market just becomes numb to it, and that's a problem.
Totally. We don't want, as if you're a bull, you don't want that Trump put to be removed. Want to give quick preview here. Triple D and I are going to hop over to the STN room in just a sec here. We're going to have Chris Bretcher on at 11 a.m. in the STN room. CC Legator, an intimate afternoon with CC Legator. We have CC on Wednesdays for Options Unchained here on our pre-market prep. But in the STN room on Fridays, you get CC pretty much all to yourself. Ask them questions, ask them education. Triple D and I will be back for the close today. Quick preview for next week on Monday on pre-market prep. We're going to get Tim Quast from Market Structure Edge at 8:35 a.m. Folks, I hope everyone has an excellent trading day today. Have a good weekend. We'll be back with you next week.